Welcome back to another episode of Indiana Football in Review. John Alden and Mitchell Paige with you as always with HoosierIllustrated.com. Here to talk about Indiana's win against the Wisconsin Badgers at home this past weekend. And I tell you what, I'm very excited to see the progression from what happened in Penn State to following it up with a conference victory at home against a team like Wisconsin. And Mitchell, I know you've got some thoughts. We were talking before the show, so we'll get into that in just a second. But I just want to go ahead and put it out there that it is nice to be able to feel like I can enjoy Indiana football again. I know that's something over the course of this season we've talked about a little bit, just the overarching struggles that we've seen Indiana go through over the past 2.5 seasons, and to see them kind of at least somewhat take a turn of a corner so far at this point. It's great to see. Brendan Sorsby looked really sharp in the first half. Really, the offense in general played really well in the first half. That was kind of left for dead when you look at what happened in the second half. But it's Wisconsin. They're known for making good adjustments in the second half, but they were able to do enough to win. I mean, they technically didn't even need to score again because they had 17 points at halftime. They ended up getting that field goal, 50-yard field goal from Chris Freeman, which was nice to kind of seal the deal, or at least give them a little bit of a buffer as Wisconsin was going down the field to try to tie the game or win it at the end. But overall, definitely the most complete performance we've seen from this Indiana football team since their outing against Indiana State early on in the year, which take with that what you will. I mean, obviously Indiana State's an FCS opponent, but the fact that we saw Indiana play a complete football game against a conference opponent that was that was attempting to stay ahead in their division, that definitely shows that this program is at least trying to take that step back to where they were a few years ago.
Yeah. First of all, I got a new microphone, so I do want to hear some feedback. John, you said it sounded good, but I want to hear some feedback, what the people think, because we're just trying it out.
Let them know.
Yeah, this is week one. But I'm going to start with, you started the show by saying Indiana defeated the Wisconsin Badgers. And when you look back on Indiana football, I don't care if it's Antoine Randall L playing quarterback or anybody, that just doesn't happen. That's not a sentence that's true very often.
Hadn't beaten them at home since 2002.
Yeah, it just, for whatever reason, even some of our high-scoring teams of the past that could score on anybody, we just never really matched up with Wisconsin for whatever reason. And I won't say this is the strongest Wisconsin team we've ever seen, but there's still some to it. That's the best team in the Big Ten West, according to record. So to kind of stick it to them was pretty cool to see. Sorsby was awesome in the first half, completely controlled the first half of the game. Second half got a little conservative, I think. And there also is Wisconsin's good on defense. They just are. Tried to make some decisions and call some plays down the stretch that were interesting. The option
on both sides.
Oh man, I wasn't sure how I was going to phrase this, but it was quite the duel down the stretch for the coaching staffs. Just interesting calls, and then players not executing for Wisconsin is essentially what was the game. But I'll be thinking about the speed option to the field with like 3.5 minutes left that we called, that we fumbled, but jumped back on the ball.
Recovered, yeah.
And then to throw the ball again. It was just so interesting to watch those two go at it. I'll say that. But it's fun. I think I tweeted this. It's just been so fun to watch Indiana the last 2 weeks. It's a roller coaster. You better put on your seatbelt, but it's fun. We make plays on defense. I think we've talked about this early in the season, but it's kind of gotten lost because we've been so lost. But Aaron Casey just continues to be a dominant force. He's so fun to watch. He's passionate. He's true. I mean, that's the kind of kid that you want. He's the kind of guy that you're looking for at Indiana. You're not going to get the the 6'5", 250-pound linebackers that Ohio State maybe has. But you get an Aaron Casey that plays the game the right way, plays really hard, and is just as productive, if not more productive, than any of those guys. So it was just really cool to see him have a big day. And at the end of the day, they made enough plays to win. That's something we don't usually get to say. So it feels really good. And I am fully on the Bowl bandwagon. I've never been more on it. I was always a believer, never doubted, ever.
Yeah, 3 games left. You got Illinois on the road this week. You have Michigan State at home, who just beat Nebraska after that. And then you have, obviously, the bucket game on the road to round out the season. And Purdue, they're no longer chasing bowl eligibility. So you're not, for sure you're not going to have, the typical thing that you expect where both teams trying to get their 6th win in that final matchup. But that's neither here nor there. One thing to take note of, there were a good amount of players, at least impact players, for both teams that didn't see the field. Braylon Allen for Wisconsin, which obviously might have had a big impact considering Indiana's run defense isn't the best. Yeah, but hey, you'll take what you can get. Indiana was also missing Cam Camper and then lost Omar Cooper Jr. during the last part of the game. So both teams without playmakers. I would say Wisconsin was without the more impactful playmaker, if I had to just be honest about that. But you play the hand that you're dealt, and obviously, as we've said already, Indiana, they just found a way to win, and we haven't said that in a long time. I mean, really, the last time that it felt like they did this, and in this point in the season last year, it didn't really matter, was on the road at Michigan State, where you were playing that game in the snow. It went into 2 or 3 different overtimes. There were missed field goals. I don't want to say it was exactly the same because you mentioned that both coaches were trying to lose, but it felt like both teams had their opportunities in that game, just like this one. And here we are. But hey, at this point, Indiana is still, they can, all 3 of their games left are winnable. Doesn't mean they're going to win all of them, but they have the ability to beat every team remaining on that schedule. Yeah.
At Illinois is just always a question mark. They're not good enough to circle them. Or they're not bad enough to circle them early in the year, like that's a game we got to win. But they're also not good enough to really be a threat. But then they're not bad enough to not think about them.
Honestly, every team in the Big Ten West feels like they fit that category for the most part.
They're the same team. Every team in the Big Ten West this year is the exact same. They stink on offense. They play decent defense. And they make a bunch of boneheaded plays. And to be honest, I think that's the majority of college football this year.
Yeah.
It's been one of the most fun years in college football. My wife and I just went this past weekend. We watched IU during the day and then drove to Raleigh to watch Miami play NC State.
Oh, that's cool.
And, I mean, these are 2 teams that supposedly have these great athletes all over the field, and they're just making stupid plays all over the place just like we do. So it just is – it's been an awesome, awesome year in college football. And, man, it would be so in our face if they were to run the table and play Central Michigan or whatever in the Quick Lane Bowl. But just when we were, about as dire as I think we felt probably, I would put the
after
height
the
of
Rutgers game. Every time Indiana loses to Rutgers in a season, it just feels like the panic button gets hit.
And it wasn't even the way we lost. The 38 to whatever 0 that was 2 years ago or a year ago.
Yeah.
That felt like we had just kind of given up on the season. This year it felt like we hadn't, and we were just getting stomped. We just couldn't stop them. And I think that was much more demoralizing. And that was a low point for us Indiana football fans. But how cool it must feel in the locker room, especially coming into meetings today, knowing that you've got a fighting chance, and a team with momentum is scary, especially a Big Ten team in a college football landscape like the one we have this year. You just never know. And how fun is that? And how lucky are we? I mean, I wouldn't trade cheering for Indiana for the world, man. It just is the highs and lows you get to experience. There's nothing like it. It's the best. It always delivers.
It was either in one of the first recordings of this show or in our other podcast, Out of Touch, where you said it's more fun cheering for a team that isn't always expected to win, their conference or national championship and that kind of thing. And that might be weird to say, but it is one of those things. It is a unique feeling to be able to come in and just kind of ride the waves as they come at you, that sort of thing. You never know. You really never know what expectations are truly set at, I guess, right?
Yeah, I think that's definitely an opinion of someone that doesn't cheer for a team that wins every game. But it is a way for me to cope and rationalize me waking up early on Saturday mornings and waiting all day for the Hoosiers to start. It just is the highs and the lows. I sat and stared at the TV after the game was over for, it must have been 30 minutes, just disbelief. Didn't think there was a chance, no way that we were going to beat Wisconsin. And then we took it right to them. And it didn't, I know there's going to be a lot of Hoosier fans that feel me on this one. When we get stopped and kick a field goal to go up 6, that game was always going to end in a long touchdown pass that we lose 21-20. And when that didn't happen, I couldn't have. I'm all on board. We're going to win.
I've got to say, and I hate to bring up past demons, but
there's a Penn State game, dude.
Well, not from this season, but from years ago. It might have been 2011, 2012. You may have been on this team, Mitchell, when Indiana traveled to. Actually, I don't know if you were on this team. I might have the year wrong. Indiana traveled to Wisconsin, and they put up 82 points on Indiana.
I was not there. That was a couple years before me. 82-10.
82-10. And ever since, and again, I don't remember how old I was. I was a kid, obviously, but that kind of a loss when you're a kid growing up, trying to be a fan of a team that you feel like is, it's fun and that kind of stuff. When you take a loss like that, it almost becomes personal. It's not like Wisconsin's a rival, but you don't ever want to see something like that ever again. And so getting to beat a team like that, and again, it doesn't affect me. I'm not a player, but when you're a fan and you get to beat teams like that, obviously whenever they beat Wisconsin during the COVID year too, that was special for different reasons. But it's nice to see that they're not backing down and that they realize that mathematically they can still get to the postseason. And let me ask you, Mitchell, I know you kind of explained this a little bit earlier with the locker room and that kind of stuff. You've been in situations before where you have to, win out or win the last 2 or 3 games to get to that bowl eligibility. What is the attitude whenever the players that are on your team see that and they know that they've got to give it their best for the remainder of the season?
Yeah. I can tell you the locker room now is a lot different than it would have been, say, the Rutgers game just happened and we were now sitting at 3-6, as opposed to winning a game like Wisconsin and going from 2-6 to 3-6, going 3-5 to 3-6 and getting smashed by a team like Rutgers. It's just a lot different energy in the building. I would say they probably aren't even thinking about it. You have momentum, so you're riding it. You can't wait to start watching the film at Illinois. You've got something going. You're starting to open up a little bit on offense. The defense is flying around. You aren't really thinking about the outside. When you start, teams start thinking about the outside. Like I bet they were reading Twitter after Rutgers, after Maryland.
A lot of them were tweeting themselves.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw Noah Pierre. He just tweeted out "jump around" or something like that. Which is,
I like that. I like that. But I'm thinking more like guys looking at Twitter IUFB, I'm a part of it. But that hashtag, if you search after the games, that is just –
it's a treasure trove.
That's where dreams go to die. It's one of my favorite pastimes. Everybody's mad about something all the time. And typically, I am a part of it. I tried to recently be a little more – have more fun with it. But I'm sure after a game like Rutgers, and that's the one I go back to, Maryland is another one that they just beat the brakes off us. It's a lot easier to start listening to the outside noise as opposed to looking at each other thinking like nobody can really beat us right now. We're feeling really good. We don't have to beat a big boy. We've got teams that we definitely have as much or more talent than. Michigan State beating Nebraska is great. And now I'm probably going to jinx it, so I'll knock on wood here. But Michigan State is horrendous. They're terrible. They have nobody that can really – I wouldn't put really any of their guys on our team, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that doesn't typically happen in the Big Ten. But outside of that, we have about as good athletes as Purdue, about as good athletes as Illinois. We can play these guys.
Not to mention you beat Illinois last season.
Exactly, when that was a much better Illinois team. So it just is you're looking at it with so much more positivity, and the meetings go by quicker. They're easier. There's a lot more smiles, and confidence and momentum is a scary thing in college football. And the Hoosiers have a lot of it right now.
That's right. So a lot to be excited about. Indiana taking on Illinois this coming week. Hopefully we're riding the momentum. I've always enjoyed this time of year when there's still things to play for. Yes, I do think, especially if you've experienced the seasons where you played in better bowl games. Yeah, it's not the ultimate outcome that you want, but just to know that you can play to get into the postseason, it's another step in the right direction. If you can get to that point going into next year, where college football is going to get turned upside down on its head, and you're going to have new teams. I don't know. By the way, one last thing. Did you see the new schedule that came out for Indiana for next year? They have 8 home games next year.
I saw that.
And
got a favorable
the first
setup.
half,
yes.
The first half of the season sets up very, very nicely for Indiana. So
take
the rest of this year, get some momentum, and then capitalize in 2024 at that point. And hopefully we'll have something to talk about as we, move forward.
I'm gonna finish with this. The Hoosiers being able to finish with 3 in a row and getting a bowl game, obviously that's really cool for the fans. There's 2 things. One, getting those extra month and a half of practice and lifts and recruiting, showing positive direction in a program, especially in the era of NIL and the transfer portal, showing positive momentum is paramount. You have to be going somewhere, or else it'll be a mass exodus from your program and you restart. It's much easier to sell to some of these younger guys that are making plays. Stay here, ride it with us. I know maybe we can't pay you as much as Ohio State's going to pay you, but we're building something here. You saw this is our body of work over the last 4 games. We've got this new offensive coordinator. That's a lot easier to sell, and not to mention the young guys getting all the extra reps in the bowl practice. It's huge. Cannot be understated how big it is. And second, what's been so interesting to watch about this Indiana team, and it's fun to be on this side as a fan that gets to just kind of watch and not think as much about X's and O's. Obviously, I think about it a lot, but I've really, since I've left, just started to look at how hard the team plays. And one thing that's been really cool about this team is I kind of mentioned it with Rutgers. It never felt like in teams of the past, it's kind of felt like drop your hands and just get punched in the face repeatedly. Like we show no fight. We've gotten beat pretty bad in some games this year, but it was not because we weren't fighting. We had some things not go our way. We make some boneheaded plays. We have some silly penalties. There's some undisciplined going around, but these guys play really hard, even when there's no reason to play hard. Watching them against Rutgers when you're down 4 touchdowns and you know that there's no chance you're going to win the game, watching somebody like Aaron Casey fly to the ball and just continue to lead from the front, that's something that they haven't had in their last couple down years. So that's been really refreshing, and I think it already sets you on a positive path. So when you can capitalize that, add in the bowl practice and how important that is for recruiting, but just in terms of your team, think about the winter workouts at 5 a.m. when it's snow on the ground and you're running into the indoor. That gets a lot easier after you just played in a bowl game. I don't care what bowl it is. People say there's too many bowls. They're all big. They're all important. Getting to that somehow after where we've been, man, I just cannot say enough how important that is for the program and Tom Allen specifically.
Yep.
Just a lot of really cool opportunities. So I know that's a lot of rambling from me, but just really excited.
No, it was great. And the journey continues. I tweeted this out this past week. The journey began to bowl eligibility officially with this Wisconsin win. I know it's not technically true, but in the actual expectation to get there, I guess is what I was getting at when I said that. So
yeah,
the journey continues this week at
Illinois.
My
tweet? Did you see my tweet?
What did you say?
I said after we won, and I want people to hold me to this. If we make it to a bowl game, specifically the Quick Lanes Bowl.
That's the one you keep throwing out there. That's funny.
Yeah. The reason that I'm throwing it out there is if we go to that bowl, I'm going to park semi-far. It'll be freezing. And I'm going to wear a Speedo and paint my body for the game.
I love that. Okay.
So are you coming with me?
Maybe I need to. Maybe
I think me, you, and Dustin paint our bodies and go to the game.
And maybe on the table. We'll definitely keep it in mind. I'm glad you already jumped ship and we're just sitting there waiting, thinking about whether or not we should jump in with you.
Yeah, I'm already in, and I want the people to hold me to it.
Well, there you go. Thanks for checking us out. Be sure to check out whatever else is going on. Hoosier Illustrated. I know basketball season starting this week, so they got plenty of features on that. A lot of exciting things. Also, rest in peace to Bob Knight. I know that the football team was sporting the RMK decals, and that's been a tough week for all those around Bloomington and those who were affected by everything that Bob Knight did, during his time in Indiana and afterwards. So rest in peace to him and prayers to him and his family. And thanks again for listening to Indiana Football Review. Also check out of Touch as always. We're having a lot of fun on that show as well. Hit the hotline, 502-830-9195. And until next time, this has been Indiana Football in Review.